I call to order the meeting of the Verona Common Council for Monday, September 8th, 2025 at 7 p.m. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we'll have the roll.
Alderperson Harrison?
Here.
Alderperson Helmke?
Here.
Alderperson Hoax?
Present.
Alderperson Keller?
Present.
Alderperson Lytle?
Here.
Alderperson Swanson?
Here.
Alderperson Tucker Long?
Here.
Alderperson Weiss?
Here.
All right, we have enough people for quorum, so we can proceed. We'll move on to item 5, which is approve the minutes from the August 25th, 2025 Common Council meeting. Questions, comments, corrections, or motions to approve? Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped public comment. Thank you. We're actually on item 4, which is public comment. If any members of the public wish to speak, now would be the time to do so. Seeing no one approaching the microphone, we will move on to item 5, which again is approval of the minutes from the August 25th, 2025 Common Council meeting. Corrections or motions to approve? Alder Humke.
Yeah, I have a correction. My name is spelled wrong. And in like the first section where I, shoot. No, I can't find it, but my name is spelled wrong. Oh, it's in the Finance Committee section 1. I just need a, okay. Otherwise, I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the August 25th Common Council meeting.
Motion by Alder Humke. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Weiss. Any other corrections? Alder Harrison.
Yeah, Alderperson Keller's name is missing an A in the roll call as well. That's it.
Okay. If there's no further corrections, all those in favor of approving the minutes from the August 25th, 2025 Common Council meeting with the two noted corrections signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. The minutes are approved. We'll move on to item 6, which is mayor's business. I just have one thing, which is a discussion on possible action regarding resolution number 25-025, recognizing September 29th to October 5th, 2025 as the week without driving in the city of Verona, which I will read the resolution to you. Whereas the Week Without Driving is a national challenge to increase awareness and understanding among leaders and the public to understand about the lack of convenient, safe, and affordable transportation options can affect people's ability to meet basic needs and engage in civic life. And whereas the city of Verona promotes a transportation system that leads to a livable community, safe travel, prosperity, environmental sustainability, and equity for all within the city. And whereas the city of Verona promotes development patterns that reduce motor vehicle travel and support walking, biking, and transit. And whereas the city of Verona recognizes that transportation is an essential need that is fundamental to equitable access to employment, community, recreation, and essential services such as healthcare and food. And whereas an estimated 30% of Wisconsinites and 30 to 40% of the Dane County population of all ages are non-drivers, including aging adults, youth, students, low-income individuals, people with physical, mental, or intellectual development disabilities, and those who prefer not to drive. And whereas an estimated 13,353 households in Dane County do not have access to a vehicle, and whereas the U.S. Bureau of Transportation Statistics estimate the average cost of owning and operating an automobile in 2023 to be $12,182, and this cost has steadily increased over the past 2 decades, and whereas the U.S. EPA and the Dane County Climate Action Plan estimate that transportation is responsible for 29% of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States and Dane County, making transportation an important environmental justice and sustainability concern. And whereas walking, rolling, bicycling, and public transportation help communities thrive socially and economically, ease traffic congestion, benefit health, and promote a cleaner environment. And whereas going 1 week without driving is an effective way to experience common barriers and start to understand ways we can improve our transportation system to better meet the needs of all residents and visitors in the city. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Verona recognizes September 29th through October 5th, 2025 as the Week Without Driving and encourages decision makers and residents to join in the special observation by taking the Week Without Driving challenge and prioritizing non-driving options to get to work, school, errands, and social activities in an effort to understand the effects of transportation barriers on non-drivers in our community. Thank you. And that concludes Mayor's business. We'll move on to item 7, which is announcements. Any announcements from the council? Alder Humke.
Yeah, I just wanted to make an announcement. partially a statement, partially an announcement. Going in the near future, we're hoping to publish information about the Be Smart gun safety program on our website, and hoping that the police department sounds like are interested in promoting this effort. Given the school shooting in Minnesota, sending my condolences to those families. Given the current state of our politics and that the national government and state government, due to restrictions politically, are not willing to take actions, I think it's really important that we as a local municipality are doing what we can do in our power to create education around how to store guns safely. And that is also an initiative that's being publicized by the school district as well. It's something that I would encourage all families to take a look at. It explains how every person can participate in this in terms of whether it's asking about play dates that your kids are going on, or having a safe storage option in your home if you own a gun. As a friendly reminder, our police department does a wonderful job of distributing free gun locks. You can just come in and ask for them. And I'm very happy that the police department is going to be promoting this initiative as well, because as we know, preventative measures are the best way we can prevent gun violence happening here in our community.
Thank you. Any other announcements from the council? Seeing no further announcements, we'll move on to item 8, which is the administrator's report. Mr. Olick.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one announcement for tonight. The Department of Public Works is getting a leaf vacuum truck due to arrive in Verona on September 19th. This will improve efficiency of leaf pickup, but also change where people place their leaves. Keeping leaves out of the street also reduces phosphorus in our stormwater. The Department of Public Works and Verona Public Library will host a leaf vacuum truck event, I'm going to call it a rodeo, during Wisconsin Stormwater Week at the library on September 23rd from 6 to 7 p.m. to showcase the new truck, talk about the new leaf pickup process, and stormwater benefits. People can expect to receive a mailing about the new truck and changes to fall leaf pickup in the near future. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Olick? Alder Swanson.
Will there be any sort of action taken to crowdsource a name for the new truck?
I like the suggestion. That is a trend across public works departments to name plows, name trucks, etc. I'm unsure at this time. I don't have an answer.
Well, I strongly recommend that we do so.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Olick? Okay. With that, we'll move on to item 9, which is the engineer's report. Ms. Fisher.
Thank you. For Country View Road, the contractors are currently working on restoration and utilities along the proposed roads and neighboring homes. For Avalon Ridge, I mentioned this, I think, last time, but an at-risk mass grading permit was issued on August 20th, and there was a pre-construction meeting held today for that project. For Kettle Creek North, there's punch list items that are underway for Phase 8. For Arden Glen, there's a water main connection that is critical to the city's Well 5, and that has been approved and will begin construction sometime later this month. For SSM Health, there was a pre-construction meeting that was held on September 4th, and construction is expected to start now that Ironman has gone through. For the stormwater webpage updates, those updates are continuously being worked on currently. For the illicit discharge detection and elimination, some of those inspections took place. Vegetation was very dense, and so more of those inspections will take place end of September, early October. And finally, for the public stormwater pond work, there's an artificial wetland exemption request that's being prepared for the proposed Cohiba Pond retrofit. The exemption is planned to be sent to city staff in early September by AECom. City staff will then submit via DNR's e-permitting website, and then work can take place on that pond. So with that, I can take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Fisher? Seeing no questions, I'm going to actually, Clerk Licht was examining the item under mayor's business, which is 6A, and last year we treated it as a resolution, and it does, despite being listed under mayor's business, it does seem to be listed as a resolution and not as just a mayor's proclamation. So in the interest of keeping all the records straight, I would go back to that item and ask for a motion to approve it. Alder Tucker Long.
I move that we approve resolution number 2025-025, recognizing September 29th through October 5th, 2025 as Week Without Driving in the city of Verona.
Motion by Alder Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Swanson. Questions or comments on the motion? Alder Tucker Long.
I just want to say that participating in this last year really highlighted for me just how overwhelmingly difficult it is to not have a vehicle and having to try to figure out how to get everywhere. I'll be honest, I only made it one day without driving a car last week. I'm going to shoot for 2 this time around. But I really would encourage everyone, even if you aren't able to, make it the whole week or even a whole day without driving, just even take a look at your schedule and think about what you would have to do if you had to do this without driving, because it really is eye-opening how reliant we are on cars and how difficult it can be if you don't have access to one.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of resolution number 25-025, recognizing September 29th through October 5th, 2025 as the Week Without Driving in the city of Verona, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Alder Lytle,
Apologies. Aye.
opposed, no. And that motion passes. Okay, we are back on schedule, and we will go to 10 for committee reports, and 10A is Finance Committee. Alder Humke.
Yes, I make a motion to approve payment in the bills in the amount of $963,630.45.
Motion by Alder Humke. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Harrison. Alder Humke.
Yeah, so there's 2 large payments. The first is to AECom for engineering services in the amount of $308,640. The second is to the City of Madison for the third quarter Metro services for $341,701.
Questions or comments on the motion to pay the bills? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of paying the bills in the amount specified signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Anything further from finance?
Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'm going to skip 10B if that's okay for now, because I believe we are still waiting for the consultant to join us virtually. And then when they are there, we will go back to this item. So with that, we'll move on to 10C, which is Plan Commission. Alder Swanson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 25-026, approving a conditional use permit to exceed the maximum height requirement for the central commercial zoning district for the roof-mounted mechanical equipment located at 301 and 303 West Verona Avenue.
Motion by Alder Swanson. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Keller. Alder Swanson.
All right, so this is about approving an extension of our normal rules to allow the obviously inclusion of some machinery for the development of the Ian's Pizza that is to be going in the currently vacant spot of the Mill District building, which is over in District 1. They took a look at what they need. I'm sure if you have any more questions, I think they're here, so they could answer some more about it, but they need more space, and to go with the more space, they need more ventilation. And so they're expanding the air conditioning and the other HVAC mechanicals, I suppose, to support the business.
And then I guess if I could just add real quick, the applicant did say they were targeting a spring 2026 date for opening, in case anyone was wondering. But motion before the body, questions or comments on the motion? Alder Humke.
Yeah, I saw the plans. I am very curious about the opening and also curious about how the enclosure, I saw they're also enclosing that middle space, which seems interesting. And if there's was there any talk about, I did not watch the Plan Commission meeting minutes, about any issues related to enclosing that? I know there's currently, I think, a fire pit or something in there maybe. And is there any issues with the residents and how they would, move through that space or anything? I just, out of curiosity.
So there was some questioning about it. I don't think there wasn't anything really solid that came up. It's more sort of a, hey, let's be aware, residents may have concerns. And I think ultimately that's likely to be a problem of building management, maybe we'll hear about it. Maybe the tenants will bring it to us, and they'll have an issue. But it's going to be within, I think, have to be solved within the community there.
Were they noticed for that? Like, were the tenant, did they get any sort of notification, or how does
Mr.
that?
Severson? Yeah, I see, I
Okay.
see. Well, if you can just,
Yes, so like a second question, they were noticed, all properties within 250 feet were noticed about the hearing. There's also a sign posted at the front, actually 2 locations on the property of the public hearing. So I did get a few phone calls about it. The particular closing of the breezeway was part of the site plan request. So not technically part of the conditional use request, but it was something that was reviewed at the Plan Commission. And they are enclosing it, which will require additional HVAC, which is the reason for some of the equipment. And then in addition, because the fire pit is there, that will be removed. So that's no longer a concern. And because right now it's a unconditioned space as a different fire sprinkler system, once it's being enclosed, they will install a traditional water sprinkler system in the ceiling.
Okay, so that's, because I was confused, but I understood the outlying piece of the lands, but the roof piece is because of the enclosure.
Multiple things. There's a couple different mechanical pieces of equipment that they're adding to the exterior. 2 are at grade behind the building,
Yep.
and then the one is on the roof. I believe the one on the roof is related to the space that's currently on the interior for exhaust from the kitchen, as well as just heating and cooling for the kitchen.
Okay, so the questions related to the people, were the questions that people called about, were there any?
The questions that people called about were they were curious about what the more specifics on the request. So I explained the request to them. And I think mainly the concern was due to like parking and traffic more so than the actual equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Swanson.
Yeah, I should note that there was, so Commissioner Mike Hankard, who is our resident sound expert based on his employment, did mention that there may be concerns that the residents may have about the sound of the expanded mechanicals, but again, that'll be something to be sorted out within the community itself, that they would have been notified about when given information about the development, so.
Yeah, I'll just call it myself real quick. Part of the reason the application's motivation for enclosing the enclosure was basically to have enough space for the restaurant. While they'll have outdoor seating during the summer, they were concerned about having enough space to have enough customers during the winter. And that would allow them basically to get through the winter. Then I will repeat what I said. I would encourage the applicant, as I was reminded by Mr. Severson, the conditional use permit doesn't cover sound. However, I'd encourage the applicant to get a quiet air conditioner if they can, just because I think it'll make things go better. But motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion. All those in favor of resolution number 25-026, approving a conditional use permit to exceed the maximum height requirement for the central commercial zoning district for the roof-mounted mechanical equipment located at 301 and 303 West Rowan Avenue, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Anything further from Plan Commission?
None, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. With that, we will move on to 10D, which is Public Works, Sewer, and Water Committee. Sorry. Alder Tucker Long.
Thank you. I move that we approve awarding the contract for Project 2025-101, the 2025 Pavement Rehabilitation and Sidewalk Improvements Contract for Edward Street to Wolf Paving Company in an amount not to exceed $443,100 and I believe 28 cents. It's not in the packet. Yes, 28. No, sorry, just $443,100.
Okay. Motion by Alder Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Keller. Alder Tucker Long.
Yes. 3 bids were received. The low bid was submitted by Wolf Paving Company in the amount of $443,100. Wolf Paving Company successfully completed similar projects throughout Wisconsin, including paving work in the city of Verona earlier this year. Public Works staff find the company qualified and capable of performing the specified work.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments on this motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of awarding the contract for project 2025-101, 2025 pavement rehabilitation and sidewalk improvements for Edward Street in the amount specified, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Alder Tucker Long.
Thank you. I move that we approve awarding construction inspection services contract to Strand for the SSM Clinic project contingent upon final approval by the Public Works Director and the City Attorney.
Motion by Alder Tucker Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Keller. Alder Tucker Long.
Thank you. Staff are requesting project scope and pricing proposals from various engineering consultants to be submitted for review by September, or they were submitted for review by September 3rd, 2025. The proposals were evaluated and the preferred option was chosen by staff. All fees associated with this inspection services will be the responsibility of the developer.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments on this motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of awarding the construction inspection services contract for the SSM Clinic project contingent upon final approval by the Public Works Director and City Attorney signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Anything further from Public Works?
Nothing further.
Okay, our presenter for item 10B has joined the Zoom call, so we will go back to 10B, which is Personnel Committee. Alder Humke.
Yeah, I move to approve compensation and classification, the compensation and classification study for non-represented personnel.
Motion by Alder Humke. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Tucker Long. Alder Humke.
Earlier this year, the City Council authorized MGT to conduct a classification and compensation study for non-represented personnel. On September 4th, 2025, the Personnel Committee met to review the final report of the study and to make a recommendation to the City Council on the implementation of a pay plan based on the findings of the study. Rachel Skaggs from MGT is here tonight to present the report and recommendations.
Ms. Skaggs, I guess we'd turn it over to you right now.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I'm going to share my screen and, oh, I just sent a request to share. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, good evening. My name is Rachel Skaggs with MGT. I am a director of human capital there and was really honored to work with the city on this classification and compensation study. I've been with MGT for 6 years, and prior to that, I spent 10 years in local government management, most recently as the city manager for the city of Princeton, Illinois, which is where I currently live, and prior to that, worked for a couple other communities in the Chicago suburbs. So I'm going to go over the scope of work that was included within this project. I'll talk a little bit about the job evaluation and how we created the classification plan. I'll talk about the market survey that looked at the external comparables and the proposed compensation plan. I'll go over our recommendations for implementation and also future administration, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have as well. I always like to start off with why complete a classification and compensation study. And there's kind of two key components. First, on the classification side, it really supports that internal structure and career progression. It also ensures internal pay equity. And then on the compensation side, that really looks at the external comparables, collecting market data, looking at competitiveness, and making sure that there's current data when developing pay plans and pay proposals so that you're competitive within the market. As part of the job evaluation, there were 62 positions that were reviewed within the city, and each position is reviewed based on these 9 job factors. And this is what really establishes that internal equity. And we focus heavily on the position, not the person in the position, looking at education, work experience, decision-making and independent judgment, responsibility for policy development, planning of work, contact with others, work of others, how much supervision that position is responsible for, working conditions, so physical demands and hazardous conditions, and then also use of technology or specialized equipment. So all positions were reviewed based on those 9 job factors. We also looked at the job description for the position. Department heads completed what we call a job analysis questionnaire, which really focuses on those 9 job factors. And then we also conducted virtual interviews with the department heads to go over those JAQs and make sure we really understand the duties and roles and responsibilities of the positions within their department. Then the classification plan was developed based on that internal equity, meaning how positions relate to one another within the city. So every position was assigned a job factor analysis score, and that's what creates that classification plan. The classification plan consists of 14 pay grades, so every position falls within one of those 14 pay grades. At the same time that we were doing that job evaluation, we were also looking at the external market comparables and gathering market data from those communities. There were 17 communities that were chosen as comparable, and you'll see them listed here. The ones that are bolded either responded to the market survey request or supplied us with a copy of their compensation plans. So overall, we had a really great response rate to that market survey and market request. All of the data that we collected, or I should say most of the data that we collected is through the use of a survey. So within that survey, each position is defined to make sure that we're gathering accurate data. You know, sometimes a job title might be a little bit different, but the major roles and duties of that position are the same. So each position is defined to make sure that we're gathering accurate data. All of the salary data that we received is then reviewed to make sure it's appropriate for the position. Salary ranges are always the preferred method to gather salary data. We also collected actual salary data, but only had to use that in a few instances because we really want to focus on the minimum and maximum ranges of those peer communities, and that really tells us what the market is. When you look at actuals, a lot of things such as longevity and bonuses can be included in that, so the ranges really provide us a good overview of what the market is for the position. And all of the salary data reflects the current market for the position surveyed. And then it is base salary only. No longevity or fringe benefits were included in that. After we completed the internal classification plan and collected all of that market data, we put together the proposed compensation plan. All of the compensation rates were calculated at the 50th percentile, and what that means is right in the middle, so the median. 50% of those communities are paying more, 50% are paying less. The proposed compensation plan that we've put together makes you competitive at the 50th percentile, right in the middle of the market. So the pay ranges and pay plans have also been calculated at the 50th percentile. Overall, again, the compensation plan consists of those 14 pay grades, 1 being the lowest, 14 being the highest, and they're broken up into these bands. And that just really, the bands reflect what we see in the market. So grades 1 through 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 10, and then 11 to 14. There's a gradation within each of the bands. And again, that's just tied to what we see in the market. So a 10% between the grades within the band. And then within band D, there's a 15%. And then all of the grades have a defined step increment from the minimum to the maximum of 2.5% between each step. Our proposed implementation of the plan kind of follows these 3 key components. Anyone who is below the minimum of the range should be brought to the minimum as soon as possible. So that shows they're being paid below market. They should at least come to that minimum as soon as possible. Anyone whose current compensation is within the proposed range can be slotted into the new plan at the closest step that's above their current salary. So we would never recommend a reduction, so they should be slotted in the pay plan at the closest step above their current salary. And then employees would then be placed on a step and receive their annual step increase on their anniversary date. And then this last bullet point doesn't apply, but if it did, this would be our recommendation. So if anyone was getting paid outside of the maximum, of the pay range. We never recommend a pay cut. We would just say that they should stay there until the market catches up. We also always want to recognize, promoting retention and managing budgetary implementations and making sure that you take into consideration longevity. So we did put together an assessment of longevity tiers, and employees would then be placed into those tiers based on their years of service. And again, this would be kind of a one-time movement into the new plan based on those years of service, and only if they weren't at the step that's recommended. So employees who have 5 to 8.99 years of service and they're not at step 3 within their grade, then should be moved to at least step 3, or should be moved to step 3. Employees with 9 to 12.99 years of service, if they're not already at step 4 within their grade, should go to step 4, and so on based on their years of service. Again, that's a one-time movement upon implementation of the plan that really is there to recognize experience and promote retention. Going forward, we always say that once a plan is implemented and approved and administered, you don't need to do a full classification and compensation study for many years. You just have to look at it annually and make adjustments as needed. So on the classification side, if there's a position that has taken on some new duties, or maybe you have a new position, we've provided the tools, and we're also available for questions, and you can score that new position and make sure it's placed within the right grade. So you can establish, modify, or eliminate positions as necessary. And then on the compensation side, again, you don't have to do a full market survey to those comparable peers, but it's important to reach out to them and ask them what their cost of living increase is going to be, or what their next adjustment is going to be, so that you can update your salary ranges based on that, so that it continues to stay with market at the 50th percentile. So again, not a full market survey, but just a general update to the ranges annually to make sure it stays at market. And then again, considering pay adjustments for employees if they change a grade, or annually on their anniversary within those step increases. So I know that was kind of quick and a lot of information, and we talked a lot at the Personnel Committee the other night, but I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any questions for Ms. Skaggs? Alder Weiss.
Thank you for that presentation. What's the reasoning for the 50th percentile being selected? Like, why is that the right number for Verona?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we never recommend a pay plan below the 50th percentile. A majority of our clients just want to be at market, so we always recommend a pay plan at least at the 50th percentile. Some clients might choose to be a payer above the 50th percentile as a compensation philosophy for their community. And then, they might want to be at the 60th or 65th or 75th. But the 50th is usually where a majority of communities are, and a good baseline for compensation. And again, we wouldn't recommend a pay plan below that.
And then and just to clarify, was that the 50th percentile of the peer communities that were named on that first slide, or is it the 50th percentile of Wisconsin or national or something like that, or is it specific to those peer communities?
Yep, it's to the data based on those peer communities. So the 50th percentile minimum and maximum of those comparable communities, correct.
Okay. And then was there any effort at trying to normalize across like cost of living or home values or something like this? Or was just the 50th percentile is a good number, but like there is some variation in just overall cost of living between those the communities listed. So is that something that's normalized at all, or is just the raw data is used?
Yeah. So those comparable communities were looked at given similarities in revenue and population and proximity. So we do have a cost of labor adjustment tool. If we're ever doing like different states for comparisons, we would adjust by that. But given the similarities of those communities, the cost of labor adjustment would be rather small. Cost of living is more of a pay philosophy discussion. If you want to, account for maybe a higher cost of living, that would come more in line with pay philosophy. But cost of labor is going to be very similar based on those comparable communities, so there's no additional adjustment made.
Thank you.
Other questions? Alder Holmke, then myself.
I just have a comment. I just wanted to say thank you to, is this the time to say this? Thank you to the staff. I know Mitch spent a lot of time, and so did Brian, in working through all this and getting it through the budget to see what the financial impacts are, talking with all the directors and all the staff here to make sure we're getting the right information. It was a tremendous effort, and I'm just truly grateful for the energy that was put into this to bring this to this point, to be able to package it and share it with all of you. Really appreciate it.
I got myself, then Alder Lytle. I just have a question so we're all clear on this. What's the effect of the vote? Because it's not the budget. So if the council votes to approve this, are we locking ourselves in the budget, or are we just accepting the study? Or what? Mr. Alec?
We are using this recommended compensation plan tonight to insert into the budget. So, I mean, it could theoretically be changed as part of the budget process, but, I mean, this is really the recommendation that's coming out of personnel to be inserted into the budget.
Gotcha. Just want to make sure everyone was clear on that. And one note from Finance Committee meeting tonight, the costs of implementing this versus, say, a standard 3% COLA was that this program would cost about $20,000 more than a 3% COLA. So just for something to keep in mind. Alder Lytle.
Thank you. Just two things. I don't know whether, Jamie, you can share a copy of these slides now that they've been presented with the council. If we could get those, that would be great.
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
Thank you. And just also to thank both the consultants and even more so the personnel committee, because I know this was a major lift and undertaking that you all went through and spent a lot of time both reviewing the data and trying to figure out how to make this implementable. So in addition to staff, I want to make sure we're recognizing the members of the personnel committee. Thank you.
Other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the compensation and classification study for non-represented personnel signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. And that motion passes. We will go back to where we were in the budget, or in the agenda, to item 11, which is new business. First up, we have 11A, which is a discussion and possible action regarding an update on requests for proposals for the city-owned property located at 2159 Range Trail. Mr. Olick.
Thank you, Mayor. The RFPs were due on September 5th, which is last Friday. We received 4 proposals. This morning, staff met for about 30 minutes and did a very cursory review and kind of got organized around the process that we're going to use to both review the proposals and then also form an interview team. And we're looking to conduct those interviews of all 4 here the 3rd week of September. And that's what I have.
I got 2 quick questions. One, can you send around a link to the Dropbox or OneDrive or whatever to everyone in case they're curious?
Absolutely.
And then 2, would it be possible once we're examining these to kind of see a bottom line up front of each proposal, how many units, which units, and how much the applicant or I guess the proposer is offering to buy the property for? Obviously, a lot of the details matter, but I don't mean to be crass, but like money makes all this stuff work. And so I think that's got to be a big component of the decision-making process. Obviously, alders can do whatever they think is best, but we got a lot of expenses coming up in the next few years, and I think money should be an important factor. But anyways, my thoughts.
Will do. Yep, no problem.
Other questions for Mr. Olick? Okay. With that, we'll move on to item 12, which is old business. First up, or only up, we have 12A, a discussion on possible action regarding the consideration of purchasing property located at 6500 Shady Bend Road, Verona, or property near well number 6 on Wayland Road for the future potential public works use. Mr. Olick.
Both parcels are either for sale or potentially for sale, and staff would like to receive guidance on making a determination on next steps to purchase property. So, i.e., we'd like to keep moving. That's the goal of tonight.
I'm wondering if Mr. Manning could give us a brief overview on the properties and if he's got a preference and advantages and disadvantages.
The two properties we've been looking at, call it the Wayland Road property near Well 6, and then the Shady Bend property closer to County M. Out of the two properties, my preference is the Shady Bend property. It's 40 acres, currently listed for sale for 4.3 million, I believe.
It's 4.45.
4.45. I prefer the topography of it. I think it will generate some good growth on that side of the city when we extend the utilities to serve the property. I think there's more flexibility for us. The Wayland property is challenging for me because of the requirement from the DNR to keep our salt shed away from well number 6. And the topography on the Wayland property is about 40 feet difference, whereas on the Shady Bend property, it's about 15 feet difference. So there's less earthwork involved with it. I guess that's the quick synopsis of where we're at with both properties.
Okay. Questions or comments? I guess I would ask our attorney, Mr. Kleinmeyer. Obviously, we need to make a kind of provide guidance for staff on which direction they should go, but I'd prefer to discuss as much of this in open session as we can. Obviously, if we get down to numbers, that should be in closed session, but
I agree with you.
Okay.
So like the policy decision of which property the council believes is better and should pursue is an open session discussion. Once that determination is made, and theoretically, you could say both. And then, but you're correct, the closed session discussion is getting into the nuts and bolts of the terms and conditions of an offer, which typically either deals with money, bless you, how much are we willing to spend, and then also other contingencies. There's definitely the potential that the other contingencies would be the same for both properties, and there I'm talking about typically we don't have a financing contingency, but we always have the ability to have that, property inspections, things of that nature. But which property the council prefers is more of an open session discussion.
Excellent, thank you. So I guess then I would open it up to the council on preferences on one, the other, or both. Alder Tucker-Long.
So we were just discussing this in the Public Works meeting as well, and there were a whole lot of questions that the committee had that we don't really have answers to. For example, like how many offices do we need versus how many available offices are in the new building? And so there were a number of other questions too, as far as how much land we actually need and how much land we might need going forward. And so our discussion switched rather quickly from discussing the two properties to discussing how to get the information that we need in order to truly evaluate these two properties. Between the two properties, the topography, yes, is challenging with the grade. There's a big ridge in the middle of the Wayland Road property, and with the distance the salt shed has to be, the salt shed would have to be on the other side of that big ridge, which isn't ideal. And then with Shady Bend, as you saw in the packet, on the last page in the packet, there is a mock-up of what a road could look like coming through. However, this is heavily reliant on other properties and who builds out first and what actually happens with Verona Road coming through, or Verona Avenue, apologies, being extended. And so one of the issues is if we don't get a road through here, if Shady Bend is the only outlet for the Public Works facility, that's also not ideal. Now, getting out in front, perhaps we have more say in over, if we're the first ones, where that road goes and how that gets developed, but there's no guarantees at this phase. And so there are a lot of questions about that. There's also some concern, at least on my part, of the road sort of cutting the property in half, because that's not really ideal for the Public Works facility to be split by a road. So there's a number of other things we could take a look at, but the more we discussed other potential options for properties or things like that, the more, at least it became apparent to me that we really don't have the data we need to be making this decision right now. And I'm very concerned that we're talking about spending, double-digit $1 million on this project, but we don't know how much office space we're going to need potentially in 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And I really want to make sure, because there are other communities around us, Lake Stoughton, who have outgrown their public works facility within a few years of building it, and I do not want to be that community. If we're spending this much money, I want this to be a long-term plan, not just a right-now plan. And so that was kind of where our discussions went during Public Works.
I have Alder Lytle, then Alder Swanson, then myself.
Thank you. I have to say, in the year and a half that I've been on council, this has been the source of the greatest frustration for me. And my frustration probably needs to be directed as much at myself as anyone. But here again, same situation as the old public library. We're finding a solution and then building a problem around it. I look at the way this should have happened, and this is not any kind of knock on our public works staff, on our engineer, on the current city council members or former city council members, but the way you approach a situation like this is you start with a needs analysis. Maybe some kind of informal needs analysis was done with the architect 5, 6, 7 years ago, but we have very little documentation of that I've seen. And I've asked a fair number of times to see that. And then you think about constraints. As opposed to what we keep finding ourselves doing here is, oh, there's a site that's going to be available. How can we make this work? And I mean, kudos to Mr. Manning for, being flexible and trying to, say we're gonna find a way to make this work. But we go into these analyses with so little data. I got to thinking about, what does it mean for our sustainability goals to have large equipment driving an extra 2.5 miles farther than they would be from the current public works building to service most of the city of Verona? And this is a back of the envelope calculation I did one evening, but it many orders of magnitude swamps out the benefits that we've provided from investing in solar panels. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the wrong site overall, but here we are thinking about spending this kind of money, not even considering what it's doing to our goals around sustainability and carbon and climate impacts. So we have yet another situation where, instead of starting broad, instead of saying, what does our public works department need now and in the future? What kind of square footage do we need? How much do we need for space, for equipment, for employees? How could we potentially even reconfigure it? So maybe not public works, parks and rec, and our urban forestry are all in the same building going forward. Like, we haven't even considered any of these options. And instead, we see a property come up for sale and say, well, this is the quickest way we can get a public works building built. And it's not a way to run a city. It's not fair to our public works staff in the long term. And I feel terrible that this situation has gotten kicked as far down the road as it has. It's not fair to anyone. But I see no way I can justify selecting a site with all these unknowns still in place. So sorry for delivering the soapbox speech remotely, but I just think a lot of the issues that the chair, Alder Tucker Long, brought up are really just scratching the surface of some of the issues we're facing. Thank you.
Alder Swanson, then myself.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to echo some of the sentiments made by Alder Tucker Long at the end of her comments, especially related to making sure that the building is ultimately large enough for our city as we grow. Something I brought up constantly when I was talking to constituents when seeking this seat was that Verona has been, over the last decade, in the top 10% of cities for growth of its size nationwide, not just in Wisconsin, not just Dane County, right, nationwide. We are growing so fast, and that is not likely to slow down anytime soon based on the makeup of Verona, both economically and demographically, and the makeup of Dane County, more broadly speaking. Verona is a place where people want to live. And that means that we need to be able to provide the services that people deserve to have in their communities. And to do that, that means that we need to have space for our employees to do what they need to do. And as someone who works at our local high school, which is a fantastic new building, it already feels like it's not big enough sometimes. And if we don't have the numbers about what we're going to need, then I have to echo the comments of Alder Tucker Long and Alder Lytle that, we need that information. We need to know what we're going to need before we can start to build it. And, I hate to be yet another, public official who's saying, hey, before we can do anything, we need to take more studies. We need to do more studies. We need to studies. Because it does feel like we're just kicking the can down the road forever. But we do need that information. We cannot responsibly, ethically act without that information.
Calling on myself. I'm comfortable going with the Shady Bend location. And I might have a different perspective in the sense that I've been talking about this for like a long time with the city staff. Public Works clearly needs a new building. I guess I feel like you'll never have a complete and perfect picture of the information. You'll never have all the data. And you kind of just have to work with what we know. We know the city's growing. We know this current space is not adequate for public works and parks. And we need to do something about it. And in agreement with what Alder Swanson said, like the city of Verona is growing a lot and it's going to continue to grow. And that's inevitable. So I feel like we're at a decision point. And if we have to make a decision, I feel like the Shady Bend location is the best one. But I'm curious to hear what other people think. Alder Humke.
Yeah, I was actually surprised when looking at this packet because I wasn't expecting to see the road go through the parcel that we were looking at. And so that was concerning to me because if we're getting land and then having to split it into, I guess that's where my sort of questions come about. And I echo concerns of what the others have said. I'm not going to repeat what they've said. I feel like they've done a good job of saying it. But the road thing really threw me because I was not expecting that. And so it brings up all these other ideas that they have shared. So I am concerned.
Other thoughts on location or steps forward? Mr. Alec.
The only thing I would say is, properties around Verona that can accommodate a building the size of the Public Works facility are pretty rare. And the road on that map is a draft. I mean, that road can be moved. It doesn't necessarily have to look like that at the end of the day. We do know that the approximate 20 acres of the Range Shell property could accommodate the Public Works facility, at least as it was in 2018. So having more acreage to work with, and I think you could do this in the reverse, where you have the land and then you can work with the architect and site layout designers and make it workable. But again, I go back to the land around Verona is extremely rare that's for sale, and what is very expensive. And I think proceeding with the Shady Bend Road property as recommended by the Public Works Director is our best option to keep moving forward. Thanks.
I got Alder Swanson. Do you have your hand up, Alder Weiss? Okay, Alder Swanson, then Alder Tucker Long.
Thank you. I do have, so two things now. I am curious, so that approximate road proposal, is that a proposed Verona? Is that Dane County? Is that state DOT? Where is that proposed line coming from?
Mr. Manning?
Yeah, that was just, I guess, a sketch put together because we were wondering, looking at big picture for the neighborhood, I've been trying to figure out how to get the extension of East Verona Avenue from the 18151 interchange down to County M. And it lines up pretty well coming through this property. It splits it pretty well between the Liberty Drive and then Fitzgerald Road. We know there's going to be multiple north-south roads going through there. This feels like a spot for one of them, and it lays out pretty logically if we can get the full interchange constructed at 18151, and then also we'd have a connection at County M. So there's nothing magic about where it is. It's just, and it should have said draft on it. I jumped the gun and threw it in the packet before that happened, but it's just the approximation of where a road could be.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So as long as like we're not stepping on toes that we know are coming downstream from state DOT or something, if we have the flexibility to decide where that road's gonna go, then I'm less concerned about it. The other thing I want to say is that if we are at this decision point, as the mayor has said, and you know, I believe that we do just need to kind of pick a spot and go, because we do have this need, because it has been so long, because we are kind of overdue. But then I want to say that as we're, you know, approving this project, as we're building, like, do we need to revisit it and say, well, we need to add, you know, 10% more capacity? I don't want to say, like, think how many we're going to need and then double it, you know, because, I mean, maybe we would need that, but that's insane. But we need to look at what we have, and before we actually start building, we need to say, is this actually going to meet our needs? Or is this meeting the needs that we thought we had 5 years ago? And we need to make sure that we are building responsibly if we are just going to build.
Alder Tagalong.
So I have two questions. Well, I have a question and a comment. So, Mr. Manning, can you clarify, do we have control over where this road goes?
Yes.
Okay. And
How do we have control with the road?
if we can't get this,
Sorry, side discussion.
If we own the land, that's accurate.
we can control where the road goes on our property, but not on the other properties?
I think that is I wouldn't, it's layers of complexities from the standpoint of, obviously, anytime a developer comes to the city and says, I want to develop land, one of the things we're looking at is our comp plan. Do we have future roads laid out somewhere then you're going to be consistent with the comp plan? If that hasn't been done yet, then we have the ability to identify where a road is going to be based on like public safety and other considerations, assuming we're not having to work with Dane County or another party too. It's totally within our control. If there's somebody else is involved, then obviously we have to talk to them. You know, listening to the discussion, I'm sure that there would be a way, if land to the north of the Shady Bend property is going to be developed, that we would be able to have a say-so in that, and probably a primary say-so. The one thing we can't do, though, is we can't say you're putting the road there so that it benefits our property. In other words, we have to look at where that road is going to be going based on public welfare and public safety considerations. We can't make the determination, and nobody suggested this, but we can't make the determination solely because then it's going to benefit our property. Now, in all likelihood, those things can come together. In other words, there's going to be a justification to identify a road in a certain location based on public safety and welfare issues, and it's also going to make sense as it relates to our property, but those things would all have to be worked out. But again, if we don't own the land, then we have to work with the property owner assuming they want to put in a road. The other level of complexity is somebody says, I don't want to put a road on my property. I mean, I can't imagine we always have condemnation authority if we want to exercise it to put a road on somebody's property, but there are significant costs associated with that.
Okay. So going back to Mr. Manning, if we cannot, let's say this road can't happen for some reason, is the Shady Bend Road enough access to the Public Works facility?
If the north-south road can't go in?
Correct. Or if it doesn't go in for 20 years or 30?
I guess I don't understand the scenario if we own the land, then we control when the road goes in.
I think, I'm looking at the map on the last page of the property. As I understand and is that the map that we're looking at? I'm sorry,
Yep.
the
Page
map on the
45.
last page of the packet.
Yes.
And there's red lines on it. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
So as I looked at that, I made the assumption, and maybe this isn't true, I made the assumption that some of those red lines would be on property that the city would purchase, and other portions of those red lines would be on land that the city would not own.
Correct.
Yeah, and so, yeah.
That's correct.
Correct. We would be able to dictate where the road is going to go on the land that we own, but we cannot dictate where the road's going to go on the area that we don't own unless, one, we work with the property owner to place that there, or two, we condemn the land for purposes of a road.
Okay. So I guess, Mr. Ryan, what I'm thinking of is the property just to the north of the Shady Bend property that abuts onto Wayland Road. If that property doesn't get developed for 20 more years, is the Shady Bend Road enough access for the Public Works facility for those 20 years until we can get a connection up to Wayland?
It wouldn't be preferable, but we could still get out to Shady Bend and we could still get out to M.
Okay. And going back to what Mr. Aulick was saying, like, I get that we have like a rough architectural drawing and a cool little animation video of a Public Works facility that would have fit on Range Trail, but I have yet to see any of the data about the needs assessment that was done to facilitate that property. No one has been able to find it, apparently. So I don't know if it's something just the architect had and was never delivered to us, or if the architect even truly did a needs assessment. I'm unsure. So I am very, very concerned about taking that building at face value and saying, yes, it absolutely is going to meet our needs today and 10 years down the road. I'm not even convinced that it would meet our needs currently today. And so I am really uncomfortable moving forward with purchasing a property, especially one that is hinging on a potential future road that, I mean, I'd like to say that we can make happen, but the reality of the matter is we don't know when the interchange of 18151 and Verona Avenue is going to happen. And if that sort of hinges on everything else, like, there's just so many, like, well, this will be great, but only if these other things happen. And I don't see that we have enough information about it even meeting our current needs. I'm very concerned that we don't even have enough office space as the building stands right now. So.
Alder Host.
Thank you. Alder Tucker Long answer. She asked my question about the Shady Bend Road access. So as a plan, if we buy this, that we would break ground like next year, that we would build without knowing any of these road situations, or what, are we just buying it to then waiting it, or what would your idea be?
Sure. If we purchase the land, the architect aligned the buildings for the Range Trail property. So we'd have to re-engage the architect. I guess I would envision doing a site survey, figuring out where the buildings go, what the layout is. And that's, I guess in my mind, that's when the street would be determined, for the alignment. We'd have to plan to extend the utilities for the sanitary, the water main, and the storm sewer. So there's a lot of preliminary that needs to happen before we finalize putting it out for bid and starting construction. I don't have a great timeline for how long it would be. I guess I would envision, if given the green light tonight to go purchase the property, I would expect it's going to take probably a year for the design. It's also currently not in the city. It's outside, so that would have to get annexed in. I mean, there's a lot of steps that need to take place before we're breaking ground and putting a building up.
Sure. Are the steps similar to if we took the Wayland Road?
Both. You're saying.
Both the same?
Yep.
Okay, and then, there was another question floating around somewhere. I'll come back. Thank you.
Mr. Severson, did you have something to add?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to point out that both of these properties that are being discussed, these are the only properties that we found that could be suitable for the Public Works facility. I don't think we've done like an in-depth analysis. We've contacted all the property owners, within the town, but reasonably, these are properties that we've known could be sold, and the property owners have expressed some interest in selling the properties. But for both of these properties, as Mr. Manning said, they are outside the current boundaries of the city. So they would need to be annexed into the city, and we would need to extend the urban service area to both of these properties. So that process is the same for both properties. Some of the other analysis that we would need to do, and is maybe something that could be discussed as part of this meeting, but in order to do more analysis on the property, there's environmental corridors on some of these properties. There's also, we know utilities are going to need to be extended for both properties. Water, sanitary are going to need to be extended. The length of that, would be different for each property. For both properties, roads are going to need to be extended, probably multiple roads, if we're going to be consistent with our practices and what we expect of other developers. So it is quite complex in terms of all the steps that need to be taken for both of these properties. And so I think it may be useful to allow staff to spend some more time performing some of that analysis on these properties, and maybe allowing AECom to do some of that analysis, because with the environmental corridors, that's going to be a sensitive issue to CARPC. And if we're going to want to expand the urban service area, CARPC is going to be scrutinizing where those urban service areas are and how we propose to develop them. So we will need to do that analysis for both sites.
And CARPC's advisory only, I just want to point out to people.
Correct.
I got Alder Harrison, Alder Lytle, and then Alder Swanson.
Okay. I don't want to add another variable to this mix, but we already own a property as well. Is it too late for us to be talking about how that property compares to the two hypothetical properties that we don't even really know are for sale? Is that all right?
Mr. Clymer?
Yeah, I mean, so we have this noticed for two properties. Theoretically, what Lucas just said and the question that is being asked gets to be discussed as part of this, because while these are two viable properties, you as a council can also reach a conclusion of, I want more information and I want more properties. And so, and I hate to say what I'm about to say because it's going to add another, and there's another part of the onion you're peeling back, but I mean, I heard one of the other things to think about, at least I thought I heard a council member say this, is there a reason why we need everything? And, theoretically, if you have three different departments at the current location on Investment Court right now, one of the options for the council, and I'm advocating for this, but you always have the existing land on Range Trail, and you could split those departments up and build one building on Range Trail and leave Public Works, if that creates more space, at Investment Court. I mean, I'm not saying that you should do that. I'm just saying there's a lot of different things for you to possibly contemplate.
I guess the only other thing I would add to the question, I guess, is that the council did direct staff to look at alternate sites. So, I mean, granted, council can always change its mind, but just pointing that out.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to make this an accusatory sort of question of why are we doing this? Just sort of taking this back a step for myself, like, how much better do we like these other two properties versus the one that we already have for this need? You know, are we that out of love with the old property that we would never reconsider just moving forward with the old plan?
Sorry, was that a rhetorical question or to Mr. Manning or?
I don't really know, I guess. I do want an answer. I don't think it's rhetorical. I just am not really sure if anyone has that opinion yet. Maybe we need to know our needs before we can really answer whether the new property ideas meet our needs better than the old property ideas. But I'm interested in whether our needs would be met if we just took the path that we already outlined.
Okay, I got Alder Lytle, then Swanson, then Keller. Alder Lytle.
Thanks. I will keep this much more brief than my last comments, but Mr. Kleinmeyer kind of covered what I was wanting us to think about. You know, why can't we consider options outside of, we're going to take everyone that's at Public Works now, we're going to move them to a new facility that sits on a plot of land that we can grow into to have expansion. But we know one of the options, we can't do salt storage, or if we try to do salt storage, it could be very expensive. We know another option involves a ton of extra truck travel and emissions associated with it. Why can't we evaluate what reuse we could have for the facility investment court, knowing that there are lots of versions of public works organizations around the country that don't have all their offices where their vehicle yards are. Now, I see that there are downsides to that, and I'm not going to pretend that there aren't. But you know, this is the kind of thinking I feel like we've never evaluated in anything approaching a formal way. And so I would say, yes, I know there isn't going to be large tracts of property just magically appearing near the city boundaries. So I'm not saying we shouldn't continue to evaluate those two sites and potentially lock one of them up. But if we're not thinking big picture about what needs to be there versus what could stay on property we already own, then I think we're missing a huge opportunity.
Alder Swanson, then Alder Keller.
Thank you. Two questions. So what is the current plan for what happens with the old Public Works facility once we construct a new one? Like is there a reuse plan that we have? What's the future of that?
Sorry.
On Investment Court?
Yeah.
I don't think there is a plan.
There's not one. The only thing that I've been consistently saying is the city needs to keep it. Because if we sold it, there's no way we get a similar building for the same amount of money, just with how everything's getting more expensive and how land's getting kind of used up around the city. So there is no plan. It would ultimately come to the council, current council, future council, and figure out what to do. And I would also point out, even if the current council decides to keep it, a future council 10 years from now could be like, no, we're going to sell it. I mean, it's just kind of the nature of city business.
Right. Okay, thanks. So I mean, on that matter, like, that seems like, I mean, maybe it's inefficient, but you could split some things up across if we were to build another facility further out. I know that, you know, it would be preferable to have some remaining closer Public Works access for people in my district, right? Because that's completely the opposite side of Verona than either of the properties we're talking about. So just my constituents would love to have continued access. So if there's some future where we buy the Shady Lane and we develop that as well as maintaining some presence at the current Public Works, that seems like kind of a no-brainer to me if we can make that logistically work. Again, not really my field. I don't know. You're the experts. But if that's feasible, then we should be talking with that in mind. The other question I had is with, and I think maybe Attorney Kleinmeyer can answer this the best, but it might also be Lucas or Mr. Manning. With all the work that would go into purchasing and making sure that we can make the Shady Lane property actually work, would there be room in there to also have some sort of study done on what our actual outlook would be in terms of our needs, to get that done at the same time as developing, like, before we can even put in, like, getting an architect to say, okay, we're going to build like this, we can't do that until we know what the property looks like, right? So we have to do the surveys. Is there time to do another survey about what our actual needs are long-term, simultaneously to those, before we start developing a plan for the building? If that makes sense, sorry. That was kind of circular.
I didn't get your question, but perhaps one of the city staff did.
Let me try again. So it's going to take time to make certain observations about the property that we purchase, if we purchase it. In that time window, is there also time to get better answers about what our actual future needs are before we start planning the building that will go there?
The answer is yes. The question for you all, though, is, do you want to purchase a property with so many unknowns? And what, I mean, I think the mayor has said this, and I agree with him. In other words, what the council has decided up to this point, you know, in discussions, is that notwithstanding the fact that we purchased the Range Trail property, we would sell it, which makes sense. There's no structure on there. I think there's a distinction between the investment court property and the Range Trail property. In this particular circumstance, it may work out okay for the city that it purchased land with every intention to use it for a certain purpose. Circumstances have changed for all of the reasons that Brian's indicated and that you've discussed, such that now maybe that's not the appropriate site. We're going to go in a different direction, and we're going to be able to sell the Range Trail property, let's say, for more than what we purchased it. And that's a wonderful thing. There are also definitely times when municipalities have had the best intentions as it relates to acquiring property and using it, where it doesn't work out, and then they end up having to sell the property and they don't make their money back. And so it is always a risk if you purchase property not knowing exactly how you want to use it and how you're going to get from point A to point B. And, you know, I think the discussions that we've had in the past on certain, not necessarily these issues, but others, is, you know, whenever the city can do something and the decisions are entirely within the city's control, that's what you want. Whenever you are doing something and you would then have to rely on someone else, in this case it may be other property owners and when they're going to develop their land and when roads can go through there, it becomes a little bit more complex and a little bit scarier, because you might not ultimately get what you want. And so can you buy the land and then do the studies? Absolutely, if you want to, but there are risks associated with that.
Any follow-ups, Alder Swanson?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Alder Keller?
I think most of my comments have already been made at this point with the last couple of comments from Alder Harrison and Alder Swanson. But I just wanted to bring up something else that we discussed in the public work meeting. The previous proposal for a building was, what, $22 million? And that was 10 years ago,
Yeah.
approximately?
Yeah.
So plus the price of land, I mean, it's not a small amount of money. So being, responsible for those funds, I think there's a level of uncertainty here that I am not sure I'm comfortable with without having more information to answer some of the questions that I think we keep on circling around.
Okay, I guess I would ask the body if someone could kind of define how we can proceed. And there is one thing that I would point out, which may or may not be a concern. We're going to have a tight budget, and if someone's proposing a $100,000 study or something before they'll proceed, I would love to know where the money's going to come from, because I don't think we got it. But anyways, to me, I guess I feel like, staff was given some guidance that the Range Trail property wouldn't work, and then of course, and giving guidance to look for alternate sites, and that they did so. And so I would like it if we decide not to make a decision tonight, that staff is given guidance on what information they would need to make a decision so we can proceed on this. And I'd also like everyone to think, as we consider the RFPs, do we still want to sell the Range Trail site? Because obviously, if we're worried at some point that both these properties could sell, or something else could happen and we could get locked out of it, we don't have a retreat plan. although again, as was pointed out by Mr. Kleinmeyer, it's possible that the city is going to net some sort of gain on this, and we could put it in a separate fund and save it for the future public works buildings, which would be fiscally prudent. But I guess, yeah, so mainly what I'm asking is how should staff proceed? What information do people need to see? And again, with a reminder to be realistic in the sense that there's not $100,000 for a study. Mr. Alder Tucker Long.
I think what I would like to see staff do, and this is just throwing this out to the council at this time, but what I would like to see from staff is, first off, I'd like to get a rough quote on what a needs study for public works and parks and perhaps the city writ large would be. And the reason I say writ large is because there are other departments who have space needs that need to be met at this point in time and in the next 5 to 10 years. And if we can take that into consideration now, it's going to be easier to add on maybe 1 or 2 more acres to this property rather than try to find another property that we can run, utilities to and build a road to and everything to get 1 to 2 more acres of property. And so I'd like to find out how much a study like that would cost so we know what we're talking about. I would also like to know what cities of comparable sizes to us and perhaps where we think we're going to be in 5 to 10 years, what size, like that size city, how many public works staff do they have, how many park staff do they have, how big are their public works facilities and do they feel they have enough space or are they looking to purchase more? I keep coming back to Stoughton, which thought they had plenty and 5 years later they're out of space and are looking for more property. And again, I don't want to be in that situation because property is going to continue to get harder and harder for us to find. I understand that it's been hard to find properties that fit now, but in 10 years, I would imagine it's going to be way more difficult to find a 20 to 30 acre parcel in the Verona area that we can afford that's all contiguous. And I'd also like to know, if there was a needs study done, back in 2015, 2016, whenever it was, can we get a copy of it? I'd like to know how many offices the new building is supposed to have versus how much staff do we have currently. And then I would like to know, too, what are the major features that were planned in the building? For instance, do we have a mechanics bay? Is it big enough to handle the snow plows? Do we have utility testing rooms in the plan? What are the things that the new building even has? And is that a complete list of what we need?
Alder Lytle.
Thank you. I don't think I often find myself completely on the opposite direction of things than you, Mr. Mayor. But my day job is understanding capital project life cycles, and so you can't build something until it's designed. So every one of our capital projects, certainly for facilities, includes allowances as a percentage of construction costs for design fees. But before you design something, you need to plan it and you need to analyze options and develop the end user needs. Otherwise, you don't have an effective design. So for me, spending money on the planning of the facility is no different than spending money on the design of the facility. And oftentimes you also see that your greatest opportunity to save costs, whether it's having spaces that serve multiple functions, building certain materials in that are more cost effective, all that happens at the planning phase of the projects. So I wouldn't think that this would be an operational budget cost. This should be built into all of our capital projects, that we don't just start with, okay, well, how big is the building going to be and what are the walls going to be made of? The initial phase of planning the facility and understanding that is a very legitimate part of the capital project budget.
Other thoughts from the council? Alder Weiss.
I'd just like to reiterate some of the things that have been said. Just go on record saying that I don't think that it would be a good idea to allow the momentum of things to get us too far down the road with a building when, if you think about spending that much money and how much money does it cost to get to a plan, and it's as small as a percentage of the overall, the overall budget, right? If it's $100,000, so that's like 0.5%, less than 0.5% of the overall project cost. And so I can't imagine that we wouldn't get 0.5% on the total project cost benefit by having a great plan going in. And so I don't know if I would be opposed to acquiring the land in advance of having that plan, but it would seem just like a not good idea. I would be opposed to us moving forward with breaking ground without having an actual report at some point, like an actual report. There's like a title on the front and like an index and like pages on the inside with like smart analysis of some sort. And if like I can't hold that in my hand, I don't know how we're even thinking about building a building for $20+ million. It just seems like we're not there yet of like actually building a building if we haven't done the work of the analysis to know what we're trying to build.
I guess then I would query the council then, because I guess it's two parts, right? There's building the building and what people feel comfortable with, and then there's acquiring the site. So I guess since we're talking about potential site acquisition separate of the building, do people feel comfortable giving staff instructions on which site to pursue now, or is it the kind of thing we want to wait on? And I can do a straw poll, right, just to see where people are at, or is that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems like I think it gets back to the question of, I think you're asking of, what information are you going to want as a council to allow you to make a decision as to whether or not you may want to make an offer on a site? I mean, I think Brian had indicated that the construction of the building, obviously, there's a lot of planning that still needs to be done with that. You also have already had a lot of good discussion, I think, related to the site. I mean, there's been some good discussion on Wayland Road, the pros and cons of that site. You've had discussions of Shady Bend. It seems to me like maybe there's more information that you need to know about these two sites. In other words, one question I would have, I think you would want to, before you would make an offer on the Shady Bend site, I think you would want to know exactly how you're going to get utilities there. And I say that from the standpoint of, while those roads may be built in the future, I think as a council, before you make an offer on Shady Bend, you want to be comfortable that you could live with access to that site off of Shady Bend for at least 5 years. Okay, I mean, is that land going to ultimately get developed and those roads be built? Absolutely. It's just a question of when. And so how long are you willing to do that? But the utilities, there's already roads that you can get in and out. There aren't utilities. So you need to know how are you going to get utilities there. And primarily, you don't want to go on somebody else's land. Wayland Road, that one, maybe you have all the information you need on that. It seems like the other things that I've heard the council say is, have we exhausted all of what we've looked for? And I'm not sure, based on what Luke says, where the staff is at on that. And then, is there the ability to move something? Is there ability to utilize existing land and structures that the city already owns, such that we wouldn't need to purchase anything, but we're going to spread things out more? Because we have a lease, I think, in one building that's just ending this month. Theoretically, you could put a city department in that building if you wanted to. I'm not saying you should do it. I'm just saying especially when that's why there's so much at issue, so much information.
There is. I guess I will, before I call in next people to speak, I'd like to do it kind of a straw poll. How many people feel comfortable picking a site tonight? Maybe a half. Okay. How many people will feel comfortable if the questions regarding access, utilities, and road construction get answered to a reasonable degree? 3, 4. So, what I'm trying to ask is when people will feel comfortable moving forward only on the site purchase? Because Alder Weiss raised an interesting point in the sense that he would consider the site purchase separate, potentially separate from the building design and building. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, what I'm trying to figure out is, does the council want to proceed at some point with a purchase of the property, or just stop it until we get the study, which could take a while? I guess I'm trying to figure out what decisions people feel comfortable making, like right now or in the near future. And again, if it's just kind of something we're going to shelve for like a few months, we can do that too. I'm just trying to get where the council's at as far as decision making, so staff knows what to do.
An important component for that for me, because I might be misunderstanding this, but I thought that part of the proposition of this was because we're trading higher value per acre land for lower value per acre land. And so there's kind of a gains of trade there with the swap. And so the value on the RFPs matters to me in terms of like, if the RFPs come in and like we're offering $1 billion for Range Trail, then I'm like,
None of them were
let's
that
sell
high.
Range Trail, buy a land where we can get it, and then we'll punt and figure it out.
Okay.
But if the RFPs for Range Trail are coming in below where we're expecting, then all of a sudden I think this whole thing is kind of like I wouldn't feel comfortable moving forward with the purchase of land, because to me the gain of that trade of the two parcels was a part of why I felt comfortable going forward with the purchase of the land.
Okay, so then I guess I will ask that in light of Alder Weiss's thing, if we had the utilities, access, road, and the RFP stuff, would you feel comfortable making a decision on purchasing a property? So let's say we'd get it resolved by October, let's say, would you feel comfortable making a decision then? Okay, I see, okay, all right, I see 5. Okay, and then I guess I want to ask, how many people would want to wait till the building is fully designed to make a decision on purchasing the property? How many people would want to see a space study before purchasing a property?
What do you mean by space study?
Or need study, whatever, like how much space we need based on our staffing needs. Okay, people would want to see that before purchasing a property.
I would prefer it. I don't think I'd consider it necessary.
Okay,
If we can make it happen, that'd be great.
okay. So I would really like to finish my train of thought, and then I will call on Alder Swanson and you, and I think someone else had their hand up as well. Is that enough guidance for staff to know what to do, at least regarding some of this stuff, as far as the property goes?
Well, it's pretty clear on the RFP, because Jamie, I think you've already had that in hand. And Mary, when you're talking about that, you're talking about these two sites specifically, right?
Yes. And again, a decision could also be, I don't want either one of them. That's a valid decision too. But I just kind of want to get to the point, because I might be misinterpreting, and there's some new people here, but it felt like staff was given direction to go out and find another property. And I don't want to put staff in another position, whether it's like continue investigating and give us more stuff if people are just not going to make a decision to purchase the property, because then staff has plenty of other work to do, and we could say, hey, stop it, find other stuff to do. So I'm just trying to get to the point where we don't waste staff's time, and we make sure we're giving them guidance that we're going to feel comfortable following through on in the end. Again, so like I wouldn't want to say, hey, figure out a property to purchase, and then he comes back and say, actually, we weren't ready to buy a property. We're not going to do it. So I just want to make sure we're being basically fair and not wasting time. Okay. So again, I guess I would ask staff is, would you feel, I think there was at least 5 alders saying that they would potentially be willing to make a decision on purchasing the property if the utilities, access, road, and the RFP amounts were brought forward.
And just one comment, we think we can find the space needs study that was conducted.
Okay.
They're in the files, pretty positive. We found a slideshow from the council meeting, so it exists somewhere. We just need to track it down.
Okay. All right. Back to comments. Alder Swanson and Alder Tucker Long.
Thank you. So, yeah, I having heard it clarified, I think I am of two minds about it. Like, there's a part of me that's very much like we are not ready to move forward on any building at all. Like, that's very clear. I want to make sure that when we're finally building, we're building something that will meet our needs, not just for today, not just for tomorrow, but for time. Like, if that means building more office space than we actually need right now, that's something that we should, I think, move towards, right? We want to have space to expand into. But that's kind of neither here nor there because we're talking about buying the property. And maybe this is more on the irresponsible side, but to me, Verona land property go up, right? Like barring the collapse of Western civilization, or at the very least the American Empire, I mean, buying land seems like a good investment because land prices keep going up for almost baffling reasons, unconnected to their actual value. And especially if the RFP comes back great and we're going to make a windfall on this range trail, but even if it's just kind of more break even, I think that we're still in a place where having access to this property gives us the flexibility to do something that we're going to need to do anyway. I do want more information to make sure that's actually the case, which we've already gone over, but that's sort of where I'm falling on this.
Alder Tucker Long.
I just wanted to clarify why I was voting the way I was. What I'm concerned about is that if, say we get roads and utilities and that kind of stuff figured out, which we'd have to figure out for any property, if our needs study comes back and says we need 40 acres of property and we bought 24, we just screwed up a major portion of this project because now we don't have enough for what we need in the next 5 to 10 years. And I just feel very uncomfortable moving forward if we actually don't know what we need. Especially considering, as Mr. Sievertson mentioned, there's environmental corridors to deal with. And if we don't know what we need on that property, we don't know what shape we need the land to be in. We don't know if we need it to all be contiguous. We don't know if it's going to be okay. And even just looking at the Whalen property, 2 months ago, the Whalen property sounded great. Now we know the salt shed can't be close to the well. So it has to be a certain distance. So now all of a sudden the Whalen property is now less desirable than it was 2 months ago because the needs that we have for that property, we have found a major issue with that property. And so I really feel like it's irresponsible if we don't know what we need, because I don't want to end up, if we had charged ahead, 2 months ago, bought the Whalen property, and we're now trying to get ready to build, and now we can't put our salt shed there. What do we do? I don't want to have to try to cram things in and make things work when we have the opportunity now to plan ahead correctly.
Other thoughts from the council? Alder Keller, and then I guess myself.
Can we add, can you get more information on this property relative to those environmental corridors and the possible impacts before purchasing?
Mr. Everson?
Yeah, absolutely. And with the purchase of any property, we would definitely want to put in the offer to purchase contingencies on, due diligence period to perform all this analysis. But we can also do the analysis, before putting an offer in. But that analysis, that does cost money, and we would need to hire someone to do that.
I was just wondering if there were other elements that we could include in this fact-gathering exercise to help maybe bring some more comfort about making a decision about a property, so we can make a good decision about, can we make some phone calls and call some other municipalities and find out how many acres do they currently have for their space? Is it 40 acres? Is it 25? Is it 10? Can we do kind of our own casual fact gather? Just by making some calls and asking those questions?
I guess I would put that to Mr. Alec.
Yes, of course we can. Yep.
I guess calling on myself, I guess something that I feel like I've learned from doing this for a while is that there's a ton of stuff that's completely unknowable, and that any decision, you're not going to have all the facts. Even just from the simple fact that how much the city grows is contingent upon who's on the council. So we can project growth out, but like we could project growth, and then this current council or the next council or whoever could just be like, we're going to grow more, we're going to grow less. Like you know, it's one of those things. It's not just an observation, like you're modeling a stream or whatever. It's something that the council has an ability to affect. So it's entirely possible we could look at it and say, hey, and not just for this, but like we only need one police officer, and then we could approve a decision to add like 100, 800, 1,000 units of housing. And then all of a sudden, the projection that we approve based on everyone's best face interpretation is now completely wrong. So to me, it's it's always unknown. There's no perfect sites. I always joke with people that a lot of the development that we see is tricky because all the easy sites to develop in Verona have been developed. Any site we try to pick is going to have problems, whether it's, the neighbors not liking it, whether it's environmental corridors, whether it's traffic concerns. Again, it's just all fundamentally unknowable. Like right now, the Shady Bend site is kind of out there. It's a lean. But if the council approved a bunch of development for residential on Wayland Road, it's going to seem like actually it was a really good site. But again, on the other hand, the council might not approve those. So again, it's fundamentally unknowable. Like if we could see the future, it'd be easy to make the decisions. But again, that's also difficult because if we could see the future, we could change the future. So to me, we just don't really know. And I appreciate all the comments and thoughts and how important this is because it's really expensive and it's important to get it right. But I think it's unknowable and we have to make the best decision with the knowledge that we have. But Alder Harrison.
Yeah, I think it's for those reasons that I feel the most comfortable, suggesting that at the end of doing our homework, after considering our needs, after, I don't know if we need to do like the formal needs study for that, but after thinking critically about what we need, I feel comfortable moving forward with staff recommendations. Honestly, right now, I still do lean towards going with the Shady Bend property and just saying yeah, let's go for it. But we need to do a little bit more homework, I think, before we can really say that confidently. I want that homework to be done. I want that to be said out loud. And I want, then to eventually move forward with what staff would prefer the most, really.
Okay. I guess I would ask staff for a timeline with some of the questions. I know some of the stuff you don't know how long it's going to take till you start doing it, but are we talking the next meeting in September, October?
As soon as practical without delay. Okay. But yeah, no, in the big scheme of things, we need to move on this too because these parcels are for sale. And so we've got to be expeditious about this whole process as well. Because if there's no sites to consider at the end of the day, there's no sites to consider. And we have the Purple Cow property at the moment as the final option for now.
Yeah.
So we'll move as quickly as we can. I don't know if
target the next meeting in September, but with the understanding that 2 weeks is really fast and it might go into October.
That would be a fair challenge, Mayor. Yep,
okay.
Let's try that.
Is everyone comfortable with that? Okay. So unless anyone has anything else to add, we will move on to item 13, which is adjournment.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn by Alder Hoeks. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alder Humke. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. And we adjourn at 8:43 p.m. Thank you, everyone.